I don't think people understand just how deep these mysteries go. Imagine waking up every day to a silence so heavy it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. Somewhere, a mother stands frozen at the doorway of an untouched bedroom, time stopped, hope flickering in the shadows. A father scrolls through his phone, desperate for a message that never comes. These aren't scenes from a movie. These are the raw, relentless realities of families trapped in the shadow of unsolved mysteries, where every day is a battle between hope and despair. Today, we're exposing the chilling cases that have left entire communities haunted, investigators obsessed, and families asking the same question: what really happened? These aren't your typical true crime stories with tidy endings. These are the mysteries that refuse to let go, that keep detectives awake at night, and that remind us sometimes the truth is just out of reach. For these families, grief is only the beginning. They're trapped in a limbo where closure is both impossibly distant and painfully close. Every phone call could shatter their world or restore it. Every news report, every stranger's face could be the key they've been waiting for. Welcome to the world of unsolved mysteries. Let me start with a case that perfectly illustrates this torment. The Beaumont children disappearance has haunted Australia for nearly 60 years, yet their parents never stopped believing they might walk through the front door. On January 26, 1966, 9-year-old Jane, 7-year-old Arna, and 4-year-old Grant Beaumont left their home in Adelaide to spend a day at Glenelg Beach. It was supposed to be a simple summer outing. They had done it before. The beach was familiar territory, just a bus ride away from home, but the children never returned home that evening. The last confirmed sighting was of them playing on the beach with a tall, blonde man who appeared to be in his 30s. Witnesses described seeing this man buying the children food and drinks, playing with them in the water, and walking with them away from the beach. Then, they simply vanished. What followed was one of the largest police investigations in Australian history. Thousands of tips poured in, psychics offered their services. The entire country became invested in finding these 3 children. But despite decades of searching, following leads that stretched across continents, and investigating hundreds of suspects, the Beaumont children have never been found. For their parents, Nancy and Jim Beaumont, this meant living with an impossible choice: hold on to hope or accept the unthinkable. Nancy kept the children's rooms exactly as they left them for years. She would set extra places at the dinner table just in case. Jim would drive the streets of Adelaide, scanning every crowd, every playground, every face that might belong to his children, now grown into adults. The psychological toll on families in these situations is something most of us can't truly comprehend. Imagine never being able to grieve properly because you don't know if there's anything to grieve. Imagine every birthday, every Christmas, every family gathering being marked by empty chairs and unanswered questions. This is what psychologists call ambiguous loss, and it's arguably more traumatic than definitive loss because the human mind struggles to process uncertainty. Nancy Beaumont lived with this ambiguous loss for 43 years, until her death in 2009. Jim continued the vigil alone until his passing in 2018. They died never knowing what happened to their children, but they also died never giving up hope. Their story represents thousands of other families around the world who are trapped in this same devastating limbo. But the Beaumont case also reveals something crucial about unsolved mysteries. They evolve and adapt over time. What started as a local missing persons case became a national obsession, then a cultural touchstone that influenced everything from literature to legislation. The case led to significant changes in how Australia handles missing children cases and sparked conversations about child safety that continue today. This evolution of unsolved cases brings us to another heartbreaking story that shows how mysteries can consume not just immediate family members, but entire extended families and communities. The case of Asha Degree represents every parent's worst nightmare, amplified by circumstances so unusual that they defy logical explanation. On February 14, 2000, 9-year-old Asha left her home in Shelby, North Carolina, sometime around 2:30 in the morning. She walked into a raging thunderstorm and vanished. What makes this case so perplexing isn't just that a young girl left her house in the middle of the night during terrible weather, but that multiple witnesses saw her walking alone along a remote highway, and when a passing motorist stopped to offer help, she ran into the woods and disappeared forever. Asha was described as a shy, cautious child who was afraid of the dark and had never shown any tendency to run away. She had gone to bed normally the night before after attending a basketball game and doing homework. Her parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, discovered she was missing when they checked on her and her brother around 6 in the morning. Her bed was empty, but the front door was unlocked. The search that followed involved hundreds of volunteers, multiple law enforcement agencies, and extensive media coverage. Searchers found some of Asha's belongings scattered in different locations, including a pencil, a hair bow, and candy wrappers. 3 years later, her backpack was discovered buried along a highway 26 miles from her home, but Asha herself has never been found. For the Degree family, this mystery has meant more than 2 decades of unanswered questions that have shaped every aspect of their lives. Aquila has described how she can't drive past certain areas without wondering if her daughter might be there. Harold has talked about how every phone call, every knock at the door, brings a moment of hope, followed by crushing disappointment. Their son, who was sleeping in the same room when Asha disappeared, has had to live with survivor's guilt and the constant reminder of that terrible night. But the Degree family's experience also highlights something remarkable about families dealing with unsolved mysteries: their incredible resilience and determination. They haven't just waited passively for answers, they've become advocates, working with law enforcement, maintaining public awareness of the case, and supporting other families in similar situations. Their annual vigil for Asha has become a beacon of hope for the entire community, and a reminder that some people refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. This kind of active engagement with unsolved cases often becomes a lifeline for families, but it also presents its own challenges. When you're constantly working to keep a case in the public eye, constantly following leads, constantly hoping for a breakthrough, when do you allow yourself to rest? How do you balance hope with the need to move forward with your life? These questions become even more complex when we consider cases that span multiple generations. The disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley in 1998 has consumed not just her immediate family, but has created a network of extended family members, friends and supporters who have dedicated significant portions of their lives to finding answers. Amy was 23 years old when she disappeared from a cruise ship in the Caribbean. She was vacationing with her parents and brother, celebrating her graduation from college. On the morning of March 24th, her father found her cabin balcony door open and Amy gone. What followed were numerous reported sightings of Amy in various locations throughout the Caribbean and Central America, but none have been definitively confirmed. The Bradley family's search for Amy has lasted over 25 years and has taken them to multiple countries. They've worked with private investigators, followed countless tips, and spent enormous amounts of money pursuing leads. Amy's mother, Iva Bradley, has described how the search has become her full-time job, her reason for getting up every morning, and the lens through which she views everything else in her life. But the Bradley case also illustrates how unsolved mysteries can create ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate family. Amy's brother has spoken about how the disappearance affected his own life choices, his relationships, and his career. Extended family members have organized fundraisers, coordinated search efforts, and maintained websites dedicated to finding Amy. Friends from college have stayed involved for decades, sharing her story on social media and keeping her case in the public eye. This expansion of impact reveals something profound about how unsolved mysteries function in our society. They don't just affect the immediate family members, they create communities of concern, networks of people who feel compelled to help, and ongoing investigations that can span decades. In many ways, these cases become larger than the original incident, taking on lives of their own, and affecting hundreds or thousands of people. Consider the case of Brandon Swanson, a 19-year-old college student who disappeared in Minnesota in 2008. Brandon was driving home from a party when his car went into a ditch. He called his parents for help, but during the phone call, he suddenly said, "Oh shit," and the line went dead. Despite extensive searches covering hundreds of square miles, Brandon has never been found. Brandon's parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, channeled their grief and frustration into advocacy work that has had national impact. They successfully pushed for the passage of Brandon's Law in Minnesota, which reduces the waiting time before police can investigate missing persons cases involving adults. Their work has influenced similar legislation in other states, and has helped countless other families who find themselves in similar situations. But even this positive outcome comes with its own emotional complexity. Brian and Annette have described feeling torn between pride in their advocacy work and frustration that they're helping other families find their loved ones while their own son remains missing. It's a bittersweet victory that highlights the complicated emotions families face when dealing with unsolved mysteries. The psychological research on families dealing with unsolved disappearances reveals patterns that are both heartbreaking and remarkably consistent. Most families go through what researchers call cycles of hope and despair, where periods of renewed optimism about finding answers alternate with times of deep depression and despair. These cycles can last for years or even decades, and they're often triggered by external events like new leads in the case, media coverage, or anniversaries of the disappearance. Families also commonly experience what's known as frozen grief, where the normal grieving process is halted because there's no confirmation of death. This can prevent family members from moving through the traditional stages of grief and can leave them stuck in denial or bargaining phases for extended periods. Some family members report feeling guilty when they have moments of happiness or normalcy, as if enjoying life somehow betrays their missing loved one. The strain on relationships within families can be enormous. Different family members may cope with uncertainty in different ways, leading to conflict and misunderstanding. Some may want to keep searching actively, while others may want to try to move forward. Some may maintain hope that their loved one is alive, while others may privately believe they're dead. These differences can create additional trauma within families that are already dealing with an impossible situation. But perhaps the most challenging aspect for many families is the lack of control. In most life crises, there are actions you can take, decisions you can make, ways to influence the outcome. With unsolved mysteries, families often feel completely powerless. They can search, they can advocate, they can keep their loved one's story in the public eye, but ultimately, they're dependent on external factors like new evidence, witness testimony, or investigative breakthroughs that may never come. This powerlessness is evident in the case of Maura Murray, a 21-year-old college student who disappeared in New Hampshire in 2004. Maura's car was found crashed on a remote road, but she was nowhere to be found. Despite one of the most extensively documented amateur investigations in history, with dedicated websites, podcasts, and thousands of hours of volunteer research, Maura has never been located. Fred Murray, Maura's father, spent years driving to New Hampshire every weekend to search for his daughter. He distributed flyers, organized search parties, and worked with multiple private investigators. But as the years passed, and leads dried up, he had to confront the reality that his individual efforts, no matter how determined, might not be enough to solve the mystery. This realization doesn't diminish the importance of family involvement in these cases. In fact, families often become the primary drivers keeping unsolved cases alive in public consciousness. Law enforcement agencies have limited resources and must prioritize active cases, but families have unlimited motivation to keep searching. They become repositories of case knowledge, maintaining detailed files and remembering small details that might prove crucial years later. The families also serve as emotional anchors for these cases, reminding the public that behind every unsolved mystery is a real person who was loved and missed. Without family advocacy, many cases would fade from public awareness entirely. The persistence of families like the Bradleys, the Degrees, and the Murrays ensures that their loved ones aren't forgotten, and that new generations of investigators and amateur researchers continue to examine these cases with fresh perspectives. But this advocacy role comes with its own costs. Many family members describe feeling like they can't fully live their own lives because so much of their energy is devoted to searching for answers about their missing loved one. They may turn down job opportunities that would require relocating. They may avoid forming new relationships because they feel it would be a betrayal. They may spend significant portions of their income on investigative expenses or travel related to the search. The emotional toll is equally significant. Family members often describe feeling like they're living in two worlds: the normal world where people go about their daily lives, and the parallel world of their unsolved mystery where time stopped on the day their loved one disappeared. Moving between these worlds can be exhausting and disorienting. Yet many families also report finding unexpected sources of strength and meaning in their experiences. They form bonds with other families dealing with similar situations. They develop new skills in investigation, media relations, or advocacy. They discover reserves of resilience they didn't know they possessed. Some describe feeling closer to their missing loved one through their search efforts, as if the ongoing investigation maintains a connection that death would have severed. The internet age has fundamentally changed how families deal with unsolved mysteries. Social media platforms allow them to reach vast audiences with updates about their cases. Online forums create communities of people interested in helping solve cold cases. Crowdfunding sites enable families to raise money for private investigators or search expenses. Digital technologies like enhanced photo analysis or DNA genealogy offer new possibilities for breakthroughs in decades-old cases. But the internet also presents new challenges. Conspiracy theories and false information can spread rapidly online, creating additional stress for families. Amateur investigators with good intentions can sometimes interfere with official investigations or spread misinformation. The constant connectivity means that families can never truly escape from their cases, as new messages, tips, and theories arrive constantly. The families dealing with these unsolved mysteries also face unique challenges around hope and acceptance. In cases with confirmed deaths, families can eventually work toward acceptance and focus on honoring their loved one's memory. But with unsolved disappearances, the question of whether to maintain hope becomes incredibly complex. Too much hope can prevent families from moving forward with their lives, but too little hope can feel like giving up on their loved one. Many families describe struggling to find the right balance, maintaining enough hope to keep functioning, while accepting enough reality to take care of their daily needs and other relationships. Some families find ways to honor their missing loved ones while still moving forward with their lives. They may establish scholarships, support groups, or advocacy organizations. They may mark anniversaries or birthdays with community events that raise awareness about their cases. These activities allow them to channel their love and concern into positive action while acknowledging the ongoing uncertainty. The impact on children in these families deserves special attention. Kids who lose siblings to unsolved disappearances often struggle with survivor guilt, anxiety about their own safety, and confusion about how to process their feelings. They may feel pressure to comfort their parents, or to avoid adding to their family's stress by expressing their own needs. Children in these situations also have to navigate practical questions that most kids never face. How do you explain to friends why your family is different? How do you handle school projects about family when one family member is missing? How do you participate in normal childhood activities when your parents are constantly worried and distracted? Many of these children grow up to become advocates themselves, using their unique perspective to help other families, or to continue the search for their missing sibling. But others struggle with the lasting effects of growing up in a family defined by uncertainty and loss. The broader community impact of unsolved mysteries is also significant. These cases often become part of local folklore, influencing how parents raise their children, how communities think about safety, and how people relate to law enforcement. They can create lasting changes in local policies, search protocols, or public awareness campaigns. But communities can also experience fatigue with long-running unsolved cases. especially if they've invested significant resources in searches that don't produce results. The initial outpouring of support and volunteer help that most families receive can gradually diminish over time, leaving families feeling isolated and forgotten. As we consider these cases and their impact on families, it's important to remember that behind every unsolved mystery is a human being who was loved, who had dreams and plans, who meant everything to someone. The families who continue searching aren't just looking for answers to abstract puzzles, they're trying to bring their loved ones home. The persistence of these families, their refusal to give up even when faced with years or decades of uncertainty, represents something profound about human love and determination. They remind us that some bonds can't be broken by time or distance or even the unknown. They show us that hope can survive in the darkest circumstances, and that the search for truth is sometimes more important than finding easy answers. These unsolved mysteries continue to haunt families not because the families are weak or unable to move on, but because love doesn't disappear just because someone does. The haunting isn't a character flaw or a failure to cope. It's a testament to the depth of human connection and the lengths people will go to for those they love. Every family dealing with an unsolved mystery faces the same fundamental challenge. How do you live with questions that may never be answered? How do you find meaning and purpose when the most important question in your life remains unanswered? How do you balance hope with acceptance, searching with living, remembering with moving forward? There are no easy answers to these questions, but the families who face them every day continue to teach us about resilience, love, and the power of never giving up. Their stories remind us that some mysteries may remain unsolved, but the love behind them burns as bright as ever.